morning, everyone. From teleSUR, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We start today in Cuba, where U.S. activists from the organization Code Pink have arrived in Havana. They're calling for Cuba to be removed from the U.S. list of so-called state sponsors of terrorism and for an end to the over 5-decade-long blockade. Their week-long trip, titled To Cuba with Love, will include meetings with government officials and also will include meetings with members of the Cuban Five who were recently released from U.S. prison. Activists from the group say they will be ready for a March State Department report on the terrorist list and will continue to campaign for Cuba to be removed from the list. To finalize Cuba's removal, Obama would need to submit a Congress report stating Havana had not supported terrorism-related activities for 6 months. The delegation will also meet with doctors who worked to control the Ebola outbreak in Africa. The independent Argentine forensic team that has investigated the Ayotzinapa case in Mexico has released a statement noting irregularities. Specifically, the report notes irregularities with the scientific evidence in the official investigation by Mexican authorities. As our correspondent Clayton Kahn reports, the revelation is fueling hope for the families and classmates of the missing youth.
Parents and classmates of the disappeared Ayotzinapa students expressed their reinforced trust in the Argentine forensics team after the organization denounced in a statement the veracity and accuracy of the federal investigation in the case of the disappeared Ayotzinapa students.
We trust and support the work of the Argentine team in that they are performing a scientific analysis rather than a political one. They base their work on technical, scientific evidence. They've been evaluating all the evidence that there is in the investigation.
It was on January 27th, marking 4 months since the students were forcibly disappeared, that Mexico's Attorney General announced that the investigation was essentially closed.
The teacher training students were deprived of their liberty, deprived of their lives, incinerated and tossed into the San Juan River, in that order. This is the historic truth of the events.
However, other academics and scientists also raised concern over how the Attorney General's office has carried out the scientific analysis, claiming that essential tests have not been practiced on the site where the authorities claim the students were massacred.
I invite the Attorney General's office to make a proper analysis of the blood that was there, if it was human blood, the volume of blood, and to determine the DNA of the stains on the ear edges.
As 4.5 months have passed since police in Guerrero attacked the students, families of the victims and their supporters have announced that they will soon search for their children in military installations, hoping that the investigation will review the role of the Army and federal police. Clayton Kahn, teleSUR, Mexico City.
And thanks to Clayton. In Argentina, the investigation into the... Actually, we're going to go to a different story. We're going to go to where teachers' demands in Paraguay have demanded that multiplied the recent education reforms in Paraguay promoted by the national government. They have taken to the streets there to denounce those reforms. The protest could last 72 hours there in Paraguay, and teachers are asking various social organizations in the country to join them. They also argue that Mexico is among the bottom countries in terms of academic output, though a large proportion of the budget does go to education. Obviously, we're in Mexico there. Now we're going to go to Argentina, where the investigation into the death of the chief prosecutor of the special unit looking into the AMIA terrorist attack of 1994 continues in Buenos Aires. It is still unclear if the prosecutor Nisman's death was a suicide or homicide. For the latest on the investigation, here's Leonel Poletti in Buenos Aires.
Since the news of the discovery of Alberto Nisman's death went public, journalist Juan Alonso has closely followed the development of events. He says in the first days of the investigation, everything indicated that it was a suicide.
Then, as the days went by, the contradictions by the prosecutor in the case emerged in the relation of the inlet of the caliber 22 bullet that killed Nisman. Given the investigation a whole set of possibilities, I'd said we're at a point where it still remains a questionable death, and the investigation into whether it was a suicide or a potential homicide remains present.
y la investigación del suicidio o un potencial homicidio sigue latente.
The former intelligence chief of operations, Antonio Jaime Stiuso, has been strongly associated to the death, and he will be called to testify in the coming days as a witness in the case.
Stiuso made contact at least 3 times with Nisman prior to his death. The last call was on Saturday, the day before Nisman's body was found. It lasted 12 minutes, on one of the 100 phones that Stiuso had. Horacio Antonio Stiuso, alias Jaime within the intelligence services, was a very powerful man in the Secretary of Intelligence, and still is. He joined the SI in 1972 and survived all governments since.
Journalist Juan José Salinas, who has thoroughly investigated the AMIA terrorist attack, does not rule out that Nisman died from an induced suicide.
If you look at who Nisman spoke with before committing suicide, he spoke with a former Chief Operating Officer of the Secretariat of Intelligence, Antonio Stiuso. He also spoke with 2 legislators, Patricia Bullrich and Laura Alonso. Stiuso was the connection with the CIA and Mossad. The 2 legislators, in Bullrich's case, she is clearly part of the CIA, and in the case of Laura Alonso, it's publicly known that she is financially supportive of the vulture funds that are trying to strangle Argentina.
Meanwhile, the ruling party in the Senate says it has the numbers to make quorum and give preliminary approval to the bill proposed by the executive branch, which seeks a comprehensive reform of the Argentine intelligence system in a session that will not count with the attendance of most opposition blocs, who are in disagreement with the initiative. From Buenos Aires, Leo Poblete Goduti, teleSUR.
Thanks to Leo. Now we go to Paraguay, where a royal marchers marched announcing the president Horacio Cartes has arrived in the capital. Called the Long March, the demonstration was organized by the Paraguayan party Paijura and other royal organizations. Beyond demanding the president resign, they are also demanding the formation of what they call a patriotic board. Party leaders say a country with social justice needs to be built. The protest will finish today with a rally outside the National Congress. The National Assembly of Niger has voted to send troops to fight Boko Haram as part of an international coalition. 101 legislators voted in favor and none against the resolution. The decision was reached after Boko Haram stormed across Nigeria's border into Niger, launching attacks on border towns. A recent attack killed at least 1 person and left several others wounded. Even though the United States has declared victory over the economic recession there, unemployment remains high. Correspondent Alexandra Hall reports on how for some, the recession in the United States continues.
257,000 new jobs were created in January. Unemployment is consistently under 6%. Many would say the economy is improving, but tell that to Isaac Cook, who's been looking for a job for 4 months. Armed with a high school diploma and some college, he says it's been difficult to compete.
Most of the people that I see that get jobs are already professional or they're fresh out of college. They have degrees and stuff for whatever position they're applying for.
Or Daiwa Jones, who moved to Washington from Atlanta for seasonal employment with UPS. Once the holidays were over in December, he was let go.
It's kind of hard out here right now. I know a lot of people been getting hired on because they're doing a lot of construction, but I don't have skills in construction. It's mostly the warehouse or general labor.
In January, the unemployment rate reached 5.7%. But critics say that it doesn't tell the whole story because it ignores those who have given up looking for work and doesn't consider the severely underemployed.
We know that the economy is growing and jobs are coming back, but it's really mostly a recovery at the top. We know that unemployment continues to be high for people who don't have the most advanced educations, and lots of people are staying out of work longer and are finding part-time work when they really would rather work full-time.
While the Obama administration wages its latest campaign to strengthen middle-class economics, cost of living steadily rises in major U.S. cities. In Washington, D.C., it takes a salary of $104,000 to live comfortably.
If the recession is over, who is the recession over for? Who is it helping? It seems like the upper class, because if you're making $104,000, you're not middle class.
4 years into a recession recovery, long-term unemployment rates are still higher than they were before the economic crisis. For these workers, the recession continues. Alexandra Hall, teleSUR, Washington.
Thanks to Allison for that report. Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Egypt yesterday. Now, Putin is in the country for the first time in 10 years on a 2-day official visit to discuss plans to open the Eurasian Economic Union to Egypt. The plans could provide a much-needed boost to both countries' economies. Both leaders are also expected to talk about the current situation in Syria, Iraq, Israel, Palestine, and Libya. Last year, the two countries agreed on an arms deal worth an estimated $3.5 billion. We end with at the International Animal Rescue Center in Indonesia. That's where Buddy, the baby orangutan, has been saved after suffering starvation and neglect in Borneo, Indonesia. He has begun eating again with the help of vets. When he was first rescued, Buddy lacked the muscle strength to open his mouth to eat, but as you can see, I think there he is eating on his own now. Since being rescued, he has regained that strength. Looks like he's doing okay. More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For teleSUR English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great day.